So they threatened you with taking away your baby?
Yes.
They had illegally tested the baby.
Saw Rico being carried out.
Neither here nor there. Basically, we have as a court order, though, saying that for now the child's going to be placed in protective custody.
And I've been documenting everything.
Basically just stood at the foot of my bed and said, if you don't comply, we're taking Rico into... I don't know, I just couldn't even say anything. They took me to another room, just hounded afterward. At 15 minutes after he was born, really pushing for it, and I was like, no.
And all this they did against your will?
Yes.
Here's the home of Steve and Cheryl Nagel.
So we've been dealing with this issue for 22 years. Lindsay was put on very toxic drugs back in 1990 when she was adopted from Romania. She only had a 20% chance to make it to 2 years of age, and after about 22 months she was so sick and she was losing on her weight chart and on her height chart. She was flattening out.
The last month, at least a month, that she was on the AZT, she would wake us up in the middle of the night just shrieking. And so I'd run in to find her over her legs, grabbing her ankles, and the pain was so bad. And then as the weeks went by, she would do this sometimes 2 and 3 times a night. Mm-hmm. And I'd call the doctor, and she would say, well, it's just a symptom of HIV infection. And in other words, you know that she's going to be dead by the time she's 2, and you're almost there. His name is Peter Duisberg, and he is a professor at Berkeley. And he is a world-renowned virologist, and in fact received the Outstanding Investigator grant one year, which is just short of a Nobel Prize, so he's no slouch. And we wrote to him, and he said, take her off the drugs or she'll die. Mm-hmm. Very soon, it's imminent, once that pain and her muscles are all flabby. Mm-hmm. So.
And this is when Lindsay was 2 years old?
Yeah. She was just 2 years old in a few days. No more drugs. So within just a few days, the leg cramps stopped. And guess what? She started eating more, and she gained 26% of her body weight in 1 month.
And what was this drug that she was on that was causing all these problems and pain?
It was AZT.
And guess what? She lived to be 22, and she's still alive, and she just had a full-term baby.
That was going to be my next question. Whatever happened with Lindsay, this 2-year-old who is suffering, and she's sitting right here. Lindsay, what do you have to say in response to that? What do you think your parents should have done?
Well, I mean, if they didn't take me off the medications, I wouldn't be here today. So I'm very thankful for them for doing that, and I've lived a pretty good life, and I plan to do that.
Now the viewers of this video need to consider here what they're looking at. Lindsay, who is the result of her parents making a decision out of love for their child, and here she's sitting here, 22 years old, has her own child, and is living a life because her parents loved her and made the right choice, and she's the proof right here. Now, I want you to consider this next event in the Nagel's life. Well, this is little Rico Nagel and his grandfather Steve.
That, when a baby's born, it's supposed to be the most joyous day of your life, and it started out like we went in and everything was fine, and closer as I was getting to deliver, a midwife came in and was like, you should really get tested for HIV. And by this time, my fiance and my mom, they weren't in the room, so she kept, she was really pushing for it, and I was like, no, my family doesn't do HIV testing, I already know. And that was about the end of that conversation. And then after I had given birth is when there was well over 15 people in my delivery room, and that's not typical for a birth. And so there was pediatric doctors, infectious disease people in there, and midwives. And they were just asking me 1,000,001 questions about why I didn't do treatment and what next kind of things. And
so they were pushing this all against your will.
Yes. just hounded afterward, at 15 minutes after he was born, about HIV and being tested and getting on medication. Doing all that, listening to all that within 15 minutes of giving birth, that's not how I pictured having my first child and it being like that. It was terrible. I don't know, I just couldn't even say anything because I just gave birth and I didn't know what was going on.
And all this they did against your will?
Yes. They took me to another room, like after you have the baby, then they put you in another room for the next few days until you get discharged. And so we were in there, and we were all just kind of...
Hadn't slept for 30
hadn't
hours.
slept. We were just kind of trying to relax or whatever, and try to piece together what just happened earlier in the morning. And 3 people came in, and it was a social worker, a lawyer, and an infectious disease doctor, and they basically just stood at the foot of my bed and said, if you don't comply, we're taking Rico into foster care immediately and you'll be charged with child endangerment. And that would be on my record for the rest of my life. So
they threatened you with taking away your baby?
Yes. So then immediately I said absolutely not, because I lived through all this and I'm 22 years old. So I said no, and the lawyer turned around and just called the county and put in the report. My dad flagged down a nurse to get a hold of that lawyer and
to stop him.
And then we talked it all out and said, we're going to comply. Rico needs to be in our home. If he's going to be on these medications, then I want to be the ones giving them to him, not a foster parent. And so that's what we did, and the lawyer said he was going to call it off. We weren't going to hear any more about it. That was supposed to be the end of the story.
So, just stopping right here for a second, would you say that they forced you, threatening to take your child away against your will, to comply with their demands?
Yes.
They left you with no choice?
Yeah, absolutely no choice.
And on top of that, they had illegally tested the baby. They had also broken all HIPAA laws because the county already had all the paperwork filled out. So Mayo Clinic had transferred all of Lindsay's information over to Mower County against HIPAA laws. They tested the baby, sent all of her personal medical information to Mower County, and Mower County already had the paperwork done, and that's why the lawyer was in such a hurry, because he came into the room at 3:20 in the afternoon, and he needed to get that paperwork filed by 4 o'clock before they closed. So that was the clock that was ticking for him. So all of this paperwork, all of this blood work had already been done with no permission, and then we had 5 minutes to decide whether she wanted to, because obviously they were going to get permission, and then she would be charged with child endangerment.
Lindsay, just everything your father just said regarding the paperwork, transfer of medical records, was all of that done without your consent?
Yeah, I had no idea any of that happened.
So it was done without your consent and without your knowledge?
Yep, and typically they would say, well, you have to sign something to get things transferred over to another medical deal.
Later she did
or
sign
to the county,
consent.
And I've never signed or consented anything.
No, she never signed for that. So even the permission was under duress.
Mm-hmm.
It's either you do this or...
I didn't give any consent, and they just went ahead and sent it off to whoever they wanted to.
So as a result of that, having that personal data transferred illegally against your consent, what did they do with that data? What was the result?
Well, they put in a report and of child endangerment, or medical neglect, I guess you would say. They had sent all of my information over to the county, and the county used all of that against me when they decided to remove him from our home.
Now, you've mentioned a few times that they eventually took your child. When did that occur? So you had the baby December 19th?
Yep, on December 19th, I had him, and then he had to be in the NICU for 3 weeks, and in January 10th is when we got discharged.
January 10th, 2013, you finally were allowed to go home.
Yes.
What followed after that?
The day that he was discharged, we had to go over to the pediatrics clinic over there to get him weighed, and then that Friday we had to get him weighed again, and then Saturday, Monday, and Tuesday. So every day we had to get him weighed, and then we saw a pediatrician there just to make sure he was gaining weight and everything was going well with the breastfeeding. And it was. So then we were able to go home to Brownsdale after that. He was still gaining weight and breastfeeding. And we were heading home, and John got a phone call from the social worker saying, I need to see Rico right now, or at least in the next 30 minutes.
Half an hour.
And the meeting was to be set at 3 o'clock for him to see Rico and him take his meds.